You have things that drop you to your knees and humble you and go, oh shit, maybe I'm not the second coming of Christ. Like I had gone so far, I had bypassed so much my humanity that I'd completely lost connection with human beings and empathy and compassion. The reason why you have the narcissist in your life is because of a trauma response. Go do great things in your life. Why are you giving all of your attention and energy to this person? Like, that's a really big question you need to ask yourself. This is why it's called the messy truth of transformation, because being human is messy. But the second thing that, like I said, what has been really helpful for me in learning to love myself in really messy moments is, hey, this is Em Hollis, and welcome to the messy truth of transformation, where it's okay to be magical and messy. This isn't your typical personal growth podcast. Around here, we talk about the real stuff, the raw, the honest, the shadow work, the spirals, the breakthroughs, and the beautiful chaos of becoming who you were always meant to be. If you've ever felt alone on your healing and growth journey, or you wondered why it feels hard even when you're doing the work, you're not crazy and you're definitely not alone. Let's dive into the messy truth of what it actually takes to transform your life. So I just have to say, because this just happened this morning, and since this is all about the messy truth and authenticity, this was such a profound moment for me this morning as I was taking my beautiful Murphy man, our golden doodle, for a walk. There is something that he does that absolutely drives me insane. And you dog owners out there, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. So when I'm taking him for a walk and he is finding a spot to go poop, oh my God, this dog has got to find the most perfect spot for him to poop. I mean, he does it with peeing, but not as extreme or intense. When it comes to pooping, I shit you not, no pun intended, he will walk in that, I call it the poopy walk. He'll walk in this poopy walk forever, like holding it in this poopy walk until he finds the most perfect spot. Apparently, I don't know what makes a spot perfect for him. Like, I am very curious if I could get inside the head of a dog, what makes the most perfect pooping spot? Like, I don't really understand, but there is, because I've watched him and he is like holding it. Like, I mean, what do they call it? Like turtle head? He's like turtle heading it as he's walking, just so he can find the most perfect spot to poop. And it drives me insane. I'm like, Murphy, just pick an effing spot and shit, go poop. It's crazy. But here's the crazier thing. This morning, it hit me because I don't know about you guys, but for me, now that I've been on this journey for quite some time, it's like as I move through my day and as I move through my world, everything is sort of an opportunity for me to grow, or everything's like an opportunity for a mirror to be in front of me, for me to learn something about myself. That's just how I operate throughout my day now. So sometimes it's really annoying, and other times it's like, wow, this simple, mundane thing that just happened was like so profound. It gave me the biggest insight into myself. And that was this moment, like a moment of your dog shitting. Who would have thought would have brought you such profound insight, but it did. So as I'm watching him turtle head and try to find the most perfect spot, he finally stops and shits. And I'm like, oh my God, that is me. I mean, I don't have to try to find the most perfect place to shit. If I have to go, I have to go. But this is a reflection of my perfectionism. And I would have never said that I was a perfectionist. Like, I don't know why. I just wouldn't have used those words. But in the reflections in my life over the past couple years, I definitely see how I fall into perfectionism. And it's really a hard line for me to walk. It's something that I'm having to learn to balance, because I do want to create really quality things. Again, you guys have heard me say this before, but something that I took to heart from my grandpa that he taught us was, if you're going to do something, do it right, like do it well. And it's so silly. Like, I can't get away with anything with myself, like doing something half-assed. I just can't. And because I can't shit myself. And so it's annoying sometimes because I can't just like half-ass do something. I have to really do it. And so there is this desire to create really good things and everything I do to do really well, but that can easily fall into perfectionism and needing it to be absolutely perfect. And so I saw that this morning with him trying to find the most perfect spot just to poop. It's like, just poop, dude. And that's what I wanted to say to myself. Like, just poop, dude. Like, just do the thing and you'll get better as you go. Like, of course, don't just half-ass it. And, I think that we can go too far into that extreme too. Like, oh, just show up and just do it. Like, that can be, well, don't just like not care about what you're doing. Like, have some level of skill and ability to do what you're doing, but don't wait until it's absolutely perfect to do the thing that you're scared of doing. And so what a profound moment of a dog pooping for me. Like, I don't need it to be perfect. And in fact, when I try to make it perfect, that's when I get really stressed out. And that's when I become really inauthentic. That's when I start to lose myself because I'm trying to make it perfect. So it's a constant evolution for me. This podcast is really big for me because I have to show up and I may not say the perfect things. When I show up on video, I want it to be perfect. I want to say the most perfect things. I want to be in the best energy for you guys, for the listeners. I want to be able to channel wisdom. And sometimes I'm not in that space and I have to show up anyways. And I have to be okay that it's not always going to be that way, that sometimes it just matters that you show up. So if anyone out there has a dog that does the same thing, let me know. Like, let me know in the comments. Does your dog do the same thing? Are you a perfectionist? Did you learn from Murphy's poop story this morning? That is not what this podcast is about. We're not talking about poop today. We already discussed that. We went over poop in a previous episode. Today, we are talking about a subject that, I don't know, maybe a little bit controversial. I don't know, maybe some people will relate, maybe others will not be happy with what I have to say. I'm starting to learn that I have a really deep addiction to people liking what I have to say that I have to get over. So once again, this podcast is going to be a great learning platform for me. You're going to see me growing out loud because, yeah, I do have an addiction to people liking me. And so I have to learn to speak my truth. I don't think I need to, I think, again, people go to an extreme with speaking their truth. Like, everybody needs to hear me and I need to be the loudest person in the room. I don't need to do that. I don't need to go to that extreme. However, I need to also not be afraid of saying certain things that people won't like me, because God, if I have realized anything, that's like, no matter what I do, even if it's like deep in my heart and I did it from love, there's still going to be people that aren't happy with me or think that I made the wrong decision. And, I just have to live with that and be okay with that, because I do want to be authentic and I do want to show up authentically, and I am authentic. So my rant, all for you to know what the topic is, which you've probably read the title, so you know what the topic is. But today we're covering the messy truth of spiritual narcissism. Now, what I want to say about this is, when you begin to go on a personal growth journey, when you begin to expand spiritually, you hear, like, when we talk about healing, especially people who start going to therapy and like start on the inner healing journey, you're going to hear the term narcissist. Like, I think it's just so thrown around. That term is so thrown around. Nowadays, people don't even like really understand what it means. And I think when you're first learning this world of personal growth, a big aspect of that is learning how to not be a victim in your life. And when you start to learn how to do your own inner healing and you start to take your power back, you start to not give your power away to others. And what that means is you no longer can blame other people for how you feel inside or for how your life is, because you learn that you can actually decipher and regulate your own emotional and mental states. And once you learn that, there's a lot of freedom in that, right? Because you're not waiting for other people to show up in a certain way, to act a certain way, to say certain things. You're not waiting for that in order for you to feel good. So this is a first step in a personal growth journey. It's first step in evolution of like, oh, okay, I thought I was a victim my whole life because as children we were victims. But now I'm realizing I'm an adult and I have choice over how I act, how I feel, how I think. And someone could say something to me, like there used to be a saying we used to say when I was a kid, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It seems as though we've completely lost that. Everybody is so sensitive to words nowadays, that you have to try to be like perfect with words. And I think because of that, we've sort of become a victim mentality culture. And so why it's so impactful when you start doing the inner work on yourself is because you're like, oh, I am not a victim anymore. People can say what they want to me. And again, I just shared being addicted to people liking me. It's like I'm not a victim in my life. I don't blame people for my life or the way things, I don't do that. However, I have to work with not feeling safe in my own body when somebody doesn't like me. So that's was part of my own healing, but I'm not blaming them for saying something to me. So I'm not saying like, you need to show up in a certain way to make me feel safe. I'm saying, no, I need to work on feeling safe in my own body when people don't like me. And that's not anything anyone can do for me. That's something I have to do for myself. So when you first embark on this path, you start to understand you're not a victim. And so when we talk about and hear the word narcissist, now we're going to have to walk a really thin line here, because even when even when you take full responsibility for your life and for yourself and your emotional state and your physical state and your mental state, that does not give permission for you to be around people that treat you like shit. Okay. So let me just delineate that. By you taking your power back and saying, you can act how you want, you can say what you want, that has it's okay. Like, I'm fine with that because it's my own stuff to work through. That does not mean you just continue to hang out with shitty people, right? So I can use the example of me in my previous marriage. The first stages of my awakening or my growth process was like, I need my husband to change. I need him to change so that I can feel safe being myself, so that I can be happy, so that I can do the things I want to do. I need him to change. And as I started deepening my awareness and my practice and my studies, I was finally reached a point where I was like, you know what? I am choosing to stay here in this marriage. And if I am choosing to stay here in this marriage, I'm not a victim to him. I'm not a victim to it because I'm choosing to stay. And from that moment on, it was like, okay, I'm choosing to stay, so I can't be mad at him. And then I would get really stuck in the like, but I don't want to be a doormat and let him just treat me the way he's been treating me for the last 10 years. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. That's the point of this growth, is like, no, this is unhealthy and this isn't okay for you to treat me this way. So I don't want to be a doormat, but I don't want to say you can do and say whatever you want. So I was really stuck in that dilemma. It was really challenging for me. And it took a few more months of growth and practice. And then it took going to a couple meditation retreats and having some really profound experiences to where I fell so in love with myself that it no longer had anything to do with like being a doormat or not being a doormat or letting him do or not letting him do. Like, I came home and I knew I had to leave the marriage. Like, but I wasn't running. I wasn't blaming him. I wasn't calling him a narcissist. I wasn't saying like, it's your fault that my life's so miserable. I was just so in love and inspired that, of course, there's no way that I would put myself back in that situation. Like, I could never go back to that. It wouldn't be the most loving thing to me or to him. And so when I left, I always say I left from love, because I was like, it wasn't even about being a doormat anymore or making him change, whatever. It was like, I was in love with myself. I was in love with life. And I knew that him and I both deserved to live happier, better lives and be in happier, better relationships. Many people could have looked at our situation after I left and gone, well, he was a classic narcissist. Like, this is the way he acted. And in fact, I looked it up. I'm going to read it to you guys because I was really curious. Like, okay, so what do they actually define a narcissist as? They could have looked at it, but I didn't. That word wasn't even in my vocabulary. It was like, I don't care what he is or what, like, it doesn't matter to me anymore. He's on his journey and I'm on mine, and I'm not like blaming him. Now, I had to work through a lot of stuff inside, obviously connected to him, and some pains and some anger. I had to do all of that. I had to do that inner child work with that marriage. I had to let myself feel angry for a while. I had to allow that, but I couldn't do that first. I could not do that first. I had to get to a place where I wasn't blaming him to be able to hold the space for the inner child to work through all her stuff. And so when we hear the word narcissist, the reason why I sometimes struggle when people are using that word is because they will use it as a way to remain a victim in their life. In other words, they'll keep saying, well, you're a narcissist. And so that's why my life is the way it is. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that it's their fault your life is the way it is. Do I believe that maybe they're a narcissist and maybe they're doing really shitty things, but does that mean that you have to stay in that relationship? No. It's your choice. Like I'm sorry, but it just is. And it is always a choice. Do the repercussions of that choice have a big effect on some people in you and your life? Totally. The repercussions of me leaving a marriage that was really dysfunctional were big. There were some big repercussions, but I was willing to deal with the impact of those choices because for me, the impact of that was going to be something that the impact of me staying was far worse. And so I was okay with the choices and the repercussions of leaving that marriage. So many of you may sit here and say, well, I can't get out of this because of this, or it's this fault, like, or I have a parent or whatever. But what I want to say to you, the most empowering thing that I can say to you is that there is a choice. You can choose to remain in that relationship. But I want to say to you that if you are stuck in the mindset that you're blaming this narcissist and you leave, you are going to attract another narcissist into your life because you haven't actually dealt with the thing inside of you that's pulling a narcissist towards you. Like you haven't worked through all of this stuff inside. You haven't done enough inner healing on yourself to go, what is this in me that is pulling this person towards me? I need to do that work first. And once I do that work on myself, I can say like, no, no, like just no, that's your choice, right? Like I love you and no. I love you, mom, and no. I love you, ex-husband, and no. I love you, friend, and no. Like you can live in both of those worlds. I always say I don't believe we live in an or universe. I believe we live in an and universe. You can love someone as a human being because they're a human being and we're all making mistakes and doing the best we can. And you can say no. And you can say, I don't need you in my life, but you can't run from it, right? And this is not to say like, as you start to embark on the inner work, I've been telling people this in coaching them for the last 6 years that if you're an alcoholic and you want to quit drinking, you're not going to go into a bar every day just to prove that you can do it, right? Like you're going to go, okay, I want to quit drinking. So I'm going to take myself out of situations that may be triggers for me until I get this down. And then maybe at some point I can go back into a bar. Maybe I never go back into a bar again. But until then, while I'm working through this, I need to separate myself. So that may mean, okay, my husband is a narcissist or my best friend is a narcissist, but I'm not going to blame them and say my life is shitty because of them and their behavior. I'm going to say, I'm going to choose to go within and understand what this is inside of me that's attracting this into my life and keeping it. Why am I keeping this in my life? What is it in me that feels like I need to have this relationship in my life? Once I start to do the inner work on and I begin that path, I can make some boundaries, right? I can say, I need some space for a bit. If you are in a marriage, maybe it's, we just need to separate for a couple months. We're not divorcing. We're not leaving. Maybe we're just having a separation so I can get some clarity and I can really heal myself. Or from the friendship, like I just maybe need to not be around that friend or family member. Like maybe it's like, I go to this family member's house 3 days a week. Now I'm only going to go once every other week, right? So you need to figure out what those boundaries are for you so that you're not running, you're taking space, you are taking the responsibility, you're doing the healing work on yourself. And then once you're sort of more grounded in that, then you can decide, do I want this person in my life or do I know? But you're doing it from a clear perspective instead of a trauma response. The reason why you have the narcissist in your life is because of a trauma response. That's why. But it's trying to show you something. It's trying to help you heal something. So the reason why I wanted to set the stage with that is so that we can understand how to navigate what a narcissist is. Because, like I said, that term is so thrown around nowadays. And I just struggle when people use it as a way to continue to be a victim in their life and continue to use it as an excuse to not go do great things in their life. Like, go do great things in your life. Why are you giving all of your attention and energy to this person? Like, that's a really big question you need to ask yourself. Why am I giving this person my energy and attention when I know they exhibit this behavior and it's really not making me, it's really not adding value to my life? That's a great way to say it. I don't want you to say it's not making me feel good. I want you to say, like, it's really not adding value to my life. It's not uplifting. Like, the people you have in your life and your relationships, you should be very choosy and picky about, because your time and your energy is very precious. And I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, we are the sum of the five closest people to us. Like, if you look around at the five people that you give your most energy and attention to, that doesn't mean it has to be in a physical proximity. It just means who you give your attention and energy to the most. And so it's really important to ask yourself, like, if I look at the five people, closest people around me, do I feel really good when I'm with them? Like, do I feel energized? Do I feel passionate? Do I have people that tell me the truth? So that doesn't always mean they're going to shoot smoke up my ass. Like, do I surround myself with people who are willing to tell me the truth about myself, but from a very loving and safe place? And so that's a big, deep question for you. Now, okay, we've established what is a narcissist. Actually, I wanted to actually read the definition to you because I looked it up. I looked up what is a narcissist. And so the AI overview says these are the 12 common traits associated with narcissism behavior. Number 1, a grandiose sense of self-importance. Number 2, a profound lack of empathy. Number 3, a constant need for excessive admiration. The next one, a pervasive sense of entitlement, interpersonally exploitive behavior, fantasies of unlimited success or power, a belief in being special and unique, arrogance, envy of others or belief others envy them, difficulty handling criticism, manipulative tendencies, and a fragile self-esteem masked by an outward show of confidence. Now, this is going to be really important when we start to talk about the next phase. When we start to build the foundation for the next phase, this is going to be really important. Okay, so we've established the behavior or what it means to be a narcissist and how we really shouldn't throw that word around all of the time. We should really understand. The other aspect I just want to add personally is, like, it's so easy. This is our culture now. It's so easy to label people and go, well, they're bad. Like, he's a narcissist, he's bad, he doesn't deserve anything, right? And I just think that we have to stop this. And we have to start looking at people as freaking human beings. Like, the person that cut you off is a person. They have kids maybe, or a family. Like, it's so easy nowadays, I think, because of technology. Like, people just get online and just destroy people that are people. Like, they're people. And so for me, when I look at a narcissist, I'm not like, oh, they are a bad person and they deserve nothing but horrible things to happen to them. I'm like, oh, wow, they're hurting. Like, they're really hurting inside, because this behavior means they probably have a lot of self-hatred. They probably are really scared. They probably live in a mind that's telling them how terrible they are, because how we treat people outwardly is how we treat ourselves. So the people that treat people really badly, you can look at them and go, wow, they're really awful to themselves. And it's not that I feel sorry for them. It's that I can have compassion for them. Again, it doesn't mean that I hang out with them. It just means that I can have a sense of compassion for their pain. They're a human being and they're going through pain. And is their behavior okay? No, it's not okay. My grandma used to say this all the time. It would piss me off. But she used to say, it's not an excuse, but it is a reason. Like, if I was talking to her about my boyfriend at the time and I was really angry and annoyed and frustrated, she'd always tell me, but unconditional love, Emily, unconditional love. You got to love him unconditionally. I'm like, Grandma, no, I don't. I don't. He's pissing me off. And she would always say, there's a reason he's doing that. It doesn't make it an excuse, but there's a reason. And it was like, oh, I didn't want to hear it at the time, but now I understand that deeply. So remember that the next time that you have an interaction with someone and you just want to label them as bad or rude or mean or whatever, again, it's not to excuse the behavior, but it's to understand. And when you understand, you can have compassion. Like, wow, they're probably really hurting because I'm not perfect. God forbid I am not perfect. I have made mistakes. I make mistakes. I do things, and I'm just trying to navigate it in the best way that I can. And maybe if I can give myself a little compassion in the moments I'm not perfect, I will do that outwardly to other. Now I just had to add that little TED talk to that. So now we know what a narcissist is, but now we're going to talk about spiritual narcissism. I don't know if this is a thing. I made this word up, but the first time I experienced this. And looking back now, I make this episode with such humility because I see where my own spiritual ego and my own spiritual narcissism played out in a lot of ways early on in my journey because I was new. I was like a newborn baby into spirituality. And of course, there were many amazing things that were happening in my life. And I think that this is just sort of a natural progression that happens when we embark on a personal transformation journey. I think this is kind of normal. And I don't care if you're talking about like personal growth or spiritual growth, even if you're like losing weight or, I talk about that a lot on this podcast. It doesn't just have to be that. It's like any transformation or change you're making in your life. If you're quitting smoking or quitting drinking, the tendency can be the same. In whatever situation you're looking at, the tendency can be the same to go to the other extreme and become a sort of semi-ish narcissist in a certain way. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So, what is a spiritual narcissist? So, the first time I encountered this was a few years ago. I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. And we sort of semi became friends with this couple, and they actually were previous students of ours. They had taken one of our courses in our workshops. And I saw them come together, and we actually knew them apart, and they came together, and then, so we knew them as a couple. And I watched him. I didn't even know what a spiritual narcissist was, but in hindsight, like great reflection for me. He was a great reflection for me to see where my own spiritual ego and narcissism had built up. But I would watch how he would talk to her and how he would interact with her. And I knew my relationship with Scott, and I knew my relationship with him was never, there was no victimization in the relationship. That's one thing that we have always from the beginning. Like, it has never been about, you need to do this to make me feel better. You need to change. Never. Neither one of us has done that. Now, do we have moments where I'm like, man, this really affected me in this way? And he's like, man, I'm sorry. Like, I never would want to do that to you, and vice versa, for sure. That's that sort of communication and vulnerability and connection, like our closest relationships are where we grow the most. So we have had that, but never, ever, ever have him and I been mean or disrespectful to each other. We haven't. And have we said to each other, like, I'm sorry if you're feeling that way, but that's not on me, that's on you. We have said that many times to each other. But we do it from a deeply loving place. Like, we don't do it like, sorry, too bad. It's from a very deep state of love for ourselves and love for the other. Because we know if we start to go down the path of like, you need to change, then we're headed for disaster. But we so trust each other, and we so trust our love for each other, that when he says to me, when I'm having a moment and I'm maybe getting into that place of like, oh, I need you to do something different, he very lovingly can remind me, this isn't about me, this is about you. And, we've had moments where that's been hard, like I said, to work through, but never disrespectful, never like, well, sorry, like never not caring. And so that was the frame of reference that I had. And we'd been teaching this, we'd been teaching like, stop blaming others for how you feel and how your life is. But I saw this play out in such an extreme where I would watch him talk to her, say things to her that were just cold and lacked all responsibility for how his actions could have an impact, because it's a thin line that you have to walk, right? You have to go, yes, my behavior has impacts and repercussions. It does. And can I look at my behavior and go, well, I don't want it to have that impact, as I talked about when I left my previous marriage. So you do have to be aware the impact that your choices are making. And you also have to know that you can't help how people feel, right? So you have to hold those paradoxes and be able to navigate that with love, especially in your partnership. And there was no responsibility for actions or behavior. It was only like, I'm going to act this way, or I'm going to say this thing, and I really don't care how it makes you feel, because you are responsible for your own feeling. Like, sorry, I let go of any responsibility. And I would see this happen, and I started to build this belief of like, oh, that is like, I'm seeing this play out. Like I'm starting to see, then I started to see like, oh, this is like spirituality, but to an extreme. Like this is taking, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think somebody that would already in their regular, like who they were before they started working on themselves, I think if a person tended to have narcissistic characteristics or patterns of behavior, I think, I'm guessing again, that it would be easy to transfer that into the spiritual realm, because once you start like, oh, I am the creator of my reality and I am not a victim, it can be really easy when you change your life to go to that other extreme and become that sort of spiritual narcissist. Like, sorry, it's on you, right? It's on you how you feel. And I can do whatever I want. I could treat you in whatever way I want to treat you, even if it's bad. And it doesn't really matter, because you're the one that's perceiving it and it's your choice. And that was the first time I really saw it. And because of that, it sort of opened my eyes, number one, like I said, to myself. And it wasn't till about a year later where I went to a ketamine retreat and I got some deep insight into my own spiritual ego. So much so that I had lost complete connection with humanity. Like I had gone so far, I had bypassed so much my humanity that I'd completely lost connection, like connection with human beings and empathy and compassion. I had lost all of that. Like I just didn't have compassion and empathy anymore. And so it was like, sorry, I'm going to behave in whatever way I want to behave. And I don't really care the effects of that on people. Again, a very thin line to walk, because yes, you have to be true to yourself. You have to speak your truth. You have to speak your authenticity, and you don't have any control how people feel. You don't have any control how they perceive what you're saying. And so you may say something that's very true to you, but because of another person's own patterns and their own triggers, they may take that in a completely different way than you intended it. So it's a tricky thing to navigate. This is why it's called the messy truth of transformation, because being human is messy. And navigating the path of spiritual growth and personal growth is very, very messy. And it's very paradoxical. There's some things that are yes, is why I say it's and, right? Because it's not or, it's a paradox. It's and, it's both things. And so, yes, you are not responsible for other feelings, and you should pay attention to how your behaviors and actions and words can affect others. It's both of those things. And I think that the more you grow, again, deeper in alignment with yourself, I think the more compassion and love that you can have for yourself and your messy humanness, I think you're naturally just going to exude that and embody that, so that you're sort of walking that very thin line between compassion and empathy, but also not people pleasing and not holding yourself back and not being authentic because you're scared of how they're, this plays into people pleasing, right? You're scared of saying something because you're scared of how they may feel, and yet you can't control how they feel, right? But you can, I think this all kind of comes down to communication. And I think this is why Scott and I have such an amazing relationship, because many people know him will say he's not a great communicator, and in some ways he's not at all. But with him and I, he is. Like, he's not in the moment of like we used to have this saying where we said red card, yellow card, green card. And it was really profound for us in our relationship. And I recommend anyone that's listening to this in a relationship to use it. Here's a free tip. Red card meant like if we were having a discussion and it started to get like, okay, I can't talk about this. If one person said red card, that meant the other person had to completely drop it and walk away. Like you cannot, if you say red card, you can't abuse the red card. But if you're really in that space where you're like, I cannot talk about this, I'm too triggered right now, red card, which was difficult for me because I'm a talker and I want to figure things out and I don't like things to be. And so it was a journey for me to learn. But when he would say red card, I'd go, okay. And I'd have to walk away and not say anything. Why it works so well is because when he would say red card, I would learn to walk away. Once he was like through the trigger, because we cannot figure our shit out when we're in a trigger. We're in our inner child state. We actually are in a childlike state. That part of our brain's activated when we're in a trigger. So we can't talk our way through it. We have to get out of the emotion. We have to get out of that little child so that we can actually communicate what it is. And he's so amazing at that. So he would say red card. We don't do anymore because we kind of know now, but he'd say red card, I walk away. And then once he was out of that trigger, we would come back and talk and we would communicate from a very deep place. Like he would say, I was triggered because I was scared, or I felt like, you wouldn't love me or something like that. Like, so we could communicate that. And so the communication and how we communicate came from a deep sense of respect and love for each other. I think that when we don't have that deep sense of respect and love for ourselves, it's hard to have that sense of deep respect and love for others. And so that easily can turn into, well, I can just say and do what I want and I don't care. And I'm completely disconnected from my humanity and how to be able to connect with another person. I'm just going to say whatever, I've seen this. So I'm just going to say whatever is on my mind. Again, these are extremes examples, right? I'm just going to say whatever is on my mind. I really don't give a shit how you take that. For me, that is not a way that I want to be in my world. If you're okay being that way, more power to you. You can turn this podcast off right now. But if you want to navigate your life and your journey in a way that empowers you and empowers others, keeping your connection to your self-empowerment while still holding compassion and empathy for others, I think that's a really good place that we all need to be in more often instead of these really extreme ends. And so what that means is you have to learn how to be respectful to yourself and understand the paradox, live in the paradox between you cannot help how people feel. You cannot help if they like you or they love you. You cannot help if they're offended. In that, you have one foot in that world, and then you have a foot in the other world that's like, I want to have compassion for this person and I want to approach this in the most loving way possible, even though it may be uncomfortable and even though they may not like what I have to say, I'm going to do it in the most compassionate and loving way. Because I'll tell you what, if you are telling someone like, number one, if you're blaming somebody right away and you're coming in an attacking mode, no one's going to listen to you. Like you're not going to you're going to have no communication from the bat. Nobody likes to be told what to do. Nobody likes to be attacked. Nobody likes to be blamed. Nobody. Communication will shut down instantly. And so if you're in a relationship and someone comes to you and they're like, man, this really hurt me. If you want to keep that relationship and you want to connect with that person, you're going to be like, sorry, it's your fault. You're going to be like, okay, let's talk this through. Like, obviously my intention was not to do that to you. My intention was not to make you feel that way. Here's what I was going through when I said it or when I did it. Here's my thinking. And that's just, I think how, again, we should approach our relationships, but our lives. And so back to sort of the spiritual narcissism, what can happen is, Ram Dass is one of my most favorite spiritual teachers. And he would just talk about how to be in the world, but not of the world. How to keep your heart open in hell. So how to understand the bigger plan that everything is happening in perfection in the world while not losing your humanity to the really, really terrible things that happen. I think it takes getting to the point he was at when he died, which is, pretty close to enlightenment, I think that you can get. the closer I think you get to enlightenment is not that you're disconnected from humanity. You're steeped into both of those worlds. You're 100% in both of them. And being able to, if you were only stuck in the suffering, it would be too much and it'd be too overwhelming, like too empathetic, too compassionate. You're just drowned by the misery in the world and the suffering in the world. So you have to balance that with like the perfection that of the spiritual world, that everything is in perfection, but you can't go so far that way that it bypasses your humanity. We can't lose one for the other. We have to learn to navigate both. And I think when people become spiritual narcissism, it's like, oh, I think I'm better than everybody else now. And I don't really care how my actions affect, and I'm special and I'm better, and fuck you. Right. And it's almost like a defense mechanism that is created as part of our ego to come out of the victimization because we've been a victim. So it's like, it's the way to sort of push ourselves out of the victimization. So I think it is partly a part of the process. I think that you just kind of have to go through that to kind of find your way back to the middle. It's like that gives you enough oomph to get out of that victimization and make changes in your life. And then you become like this, like, well, I think I'm better than you, and I think I'm special, and I'm like the next coming of Christ, and I'm all of these things. That's what a spiritual ego is. And you sort of need that to get out of that suffering. And then you like I said, you have things happen that make you humbled. You have things that drop you to your knees and humble you and go, oh shit, maybe I'm not the second coming of Christ. And again, I think for me in my own journey, this process has been about really loving myself, because in the beginning, it was like, I have to be perfect and I have to sort of disconnect myself from humanity in order to teach, in order to maintain this life. And the more that I have learned the process of loving myself through the goo and all the goo moments that I've had and all the messy, messy, messy moments I've had, the more that I have really come to have compassion and love for myself in my messy humanness is what has been the biggest change for me. And so I want to one more time read what narcissism means. And now I want you to look at it through the lens of spirituality, like through the lens of people that you may know that all of a sudden embark on the spiritual path and how they act and behave. And so I'm going to read this to you again. The 12 common traits. Now, again, thinking through the lens of spirituality, a grandiose sense of self-importance. Now, all of a sudden, you think like you are channeling, whomever, and you are going to save humanity, and you are the one that's, you are super self-important. A profound lack of empathy. So again, this example of this guy that I saw doing this is like he had no empathy for his partner. There was no like, oh my God, I'm sorry. There was no like, okay, let's try to make this work. Let's figure out what's underneath it. There was no empathy. There was no feeling what she was feeling. It was just, sorry, I'm going to talk to you and treat you this way. And if you don't like it, that's your problem. That's you could do that as a spiritual person and, as a non-spiritual person. A constant need for excessive admiration, a pervasive sense of entitlement, interpersonally exploitive behavior. So again, like blaming her. Fantasies of unlimited success or power, a belief in being special and unique, arrogance, envy of others or belief others envy them, difficulty handling criticism, manipulative tendencies, and a fragile self-esteem masked by an outward show of confidence. Now, again, I was very humbled when I read that, looking back and going, yeah, I can see a lot of those tendencies I had early on. Now, again, that's not to say that I wasn't doing some really good things in my life. And like I said, it's sort of a necessary part of the process, but I can see how at that level of consciousness, I did think I was like this big special thing that was more special than anybody else. Like that is usually a sign when you start to think like, oh, I am the one that's special. I'm more special than anyone else. That's like our inner child really just wanting attention. And it's really easy to do that in the spiritual world. I've seen so many people do that. Like, I am the next coming of Christ. I am Neo. I am the one. I am the one. Because we go into spirituality because we have trauma. We're trying to find the way out of our trauma. And so if we don't balance that spiritual side with that human side, that's when we can have these spiritual narcissistic tendencies or behaviors. And, coming I'm very humble in this. This is where I am right now in my journey. I don't pretend anymore to have it all figured out. I don't pretend to know everything, because tomorrow I'm going to know something more about myself. And so I don't pretend to know everything anymore. But what I can say so far in my journey is I can look back and go, wow, that was a period of my life that I was exhibiting those behaviors. And, it's a normal part of the process, but you can't stay stuck there. You have to continue to grow and evolve past that. And you grow and evolve past that, I think, by learning to love your human self. So the first part will be like, I am going all the way over into like spiritual bypass, where I think humans are asleep and they're stupid and they're dumb. Did that. Completely disconnected. And the funny thing is like, how do you think you're going to help humanity if you hate them? Like, it's kind of an oxymoron. Like, oh, I'm going to save humanity and I'm going to wake everybody up, but I hate humanity. Like the two don't go hand in hand. So I think if you want to help humanity, you have to learn to love them. And I think you learn to love them by learning to love yourself, by learning to love your own human messiness. And I think that's the antidote, or maybe not the antidote, because like I said, I think this is a normal part of the process. But I think in order to move to the next level and in order to move to a higher state of consciousness, you have to love the human aspect of you, which is why I love the quadrant theory, because the quadrant theory breaks down those two parts of our brain and says, yes, we are human and yes, we are spirit. And the magic is going to be when we can learn to use both sides of our brain, when we can actually learn to navigate two worlds that seem like a complete paradox, but when we can bring them together, that is really where the magic is going to happen. And that framework, the quadrant theory framework, has helped me in my journey go, yep, there's this little wounded inner child, my quadrant 2, who has all these human things, and she messes up and she's scared and she feels lack of self-esteem and she wants people to like her and all of these things. Yes, that's there. And there's the ego part of me that's like, this is how I show up in the world and I'm strong and I'm courageous. And there's this really playful child part of me that's like, I just want to have fun and play. And then there's this really, really wise, like grounded teacher in me, my quadrant 4. And so that framework has helped me so much in loving my own humanity. And so the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because, again, I can see it in my own journey. But if maybe you're listening to this and maybe it's the mirror for you that I needed for me, right? Like he was a mirror for myself to go, holy shit, maybe I have some of these tendencies and maybe I need to work on that, right? And so maybe this episode is a mirror for you, or maybe you want to send it to somebody else that you see sort of leans towards that way. That's like, they just are an asshole now. Like they're just an asshole that's labeled themselves spiritual. Like now they just get to act whatever the way they are, but they put a spiritual label on themselves and now it's okay. So maybe you know someone and maybe they're open enough to listening to this to go, oh shoot, darn it. There's where the ego got me again, right? And reflect on it and go, how can I be better at being empathetic and compassionate for humanity, not getting lost in that, not becoming a victim to that, not becoming a victim to everybody else, but at least having compassion for that aspect of myself that still is human, and love myself for that, love my humanity, because I promise you, the more you love your own humanity, the more you're going to love the rest of humanity, and you won't be spiritually bypassing to try to only stay in the spiritual world. You'll just let that be an embodiment and an integration of who you are. And then you, like I said, you start to marry those two, holy moly, magic happens. So one way, because I always want to end these podcasts with a tangible tool that you can take forward. Number one, like I said, maybe this is your wake up call or your reflection in the mirror to go, how can I be better at this? Or somebody else's. But the second thing that, like I said, what has been really helpful for me in learning to love myself in really messy moments is a meditation that I created called Loving Yourself Through the Goo. And it's on the website, mhollis.life. If you go to meditation and breathworks and you go to down to the meditations, you're going to see loving yourself through the goo. And I think that can be a very profound tool because, again, the more you love yourself in the goo and the messy, the more that you're going to accept and love humanity. Back to the beginning of this, doesn't mean you hang out with assholes, but it does mean you learn to have compassion and empathy while having boundaries. I think that's really the line we need to learn to walk. So, loving yourself through the goo, recognizing your own spiritual narcissistic tendencies, not being a victim in your life, but learning how to create boundaries. All of these things are really important aspects. They've been important aspects in my own life, and I know for sure for others that have guided and walked through this process. So let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. If you say something mean, it's going to hurt my inner wounded child. But I have to learn to feel safe in my body with people not liking me. So I guess that's a challenge. Don't say anything mean now just to challenge me. I don't need that. However, let me know if you've seen this. Let me know if you recognize this in yourself, what your thoughts are. I think that we need to be able to, again, connect with other people and go, yeah, I see that in myself, and that's okay. Like, I'm not going to beat myself up or hate myself because maybe I've done these things. I'm going to learn to love myself more and more and more. I hope this was valuable for you. I love you all. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Messy Truth of Transformation. I am having so much fun. Are you guys having fun? Let me know in the comments. See you on the next one. Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode. If this episode resonated in any way, I would love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with somebody who's in the thick of it too. If you want more behind the scenes, or you want tools to support you along your journey of messiness, come hang out with me over on Instagram at mhollis_thesage. But most importantly, just remember, the mess is part of the magic.